Hey everybody, trying things a little different today, and let's see how it works out. I regretfully botched hot chocolate and hot sheets for Vinay this week. Her and Alex recorded an episode, and I don't know what I did wrong, but the audio was extremely poor. I mean, there was no way I could send it on. So a little bit disappointed about that, but onward and upward, and that's why I'm going to try things a little differently, so I know what to do next time we decide to record an episode. So I'll get straight to the point here. Ashley and I are members of several different closed Facebook groups that many of you probably aren't privy to. One of those being an independent broker network. It's really a site where independent brokers, or they call them indies, kind of get together and brainstorm and have ideas and talk about what other independent brokers are doing. You know, they talk about things they've tried and didn't work. They talk about things they tried and did work. And one of the posts this week that caught my eye, I think it was yesterday, there was an independent broker on there that said that she had challenged her office, her people, to do 30 face-to-face meetings in 30 days. I thought, wow, that's pretty relevant content right there. That's pretty relevant conversation with all the conversations we've been having. Now, I'm not ready to lay down that challenge, but Ashley and I may have a challenge about face-to-face meetings coming up. Bridget, I'm sorry, I just muted your phone call. I hope you didn't need something important. But anyway, so what I do want to talk about, let's talk about face-to-face meetings and how that's relevant. So the reason I think that's relevant, a lot of you, we've been talking about goals here. It's January 22nd. We've talked a lot about goals. Most of you have either set your goals with your supervisor, or you at least know what your goals are going to be, even if you haven't had that meeting yet. So why are face-to-face meetings important? What are you talking about, Tracy? Get to it. Okay, so almost all of you that I've talked to about your goals, you've talked about either, trying different ways of flexing your sphere. You've talked about, doing things to network, reaching out and touching more people. Building relationships is always, a big deal in this business. So around goal setting time, I think it's very, very important to talk about face-to-face meetings. I was looking at some stuff after I looked at that Facebook post. I started Googling, okay, so what is the value in a face-to-face meeting? Is there any value in a face-to-face meeting? How many people place value in a face-to-face meeting? And I think some of the stats are really interesting. I know that you probably get bored with me talking to you about stats, but listen to this. I found an article, and it was before Steve Jobs passed away. Talked about even Steve Jobs in the land of iPhones, in the age of iPhones. He said that in-person meetings are still very valuable. He said face-to-face meetings allow for clearer communication. In addition to being able to read facial expressions, body language, and inflection, in-person meetings often end up being more positive and considered more credible than online or virtual conversations. So not all meetings have to be really like, we're not even talking about business meetings. We're just talking about talking to people, talking to your sphere, talking to your folks. Face-to-face meetings are more effective. And why is that? So I said, okay, why are face-to-face meetings more effective? Well, it turns out that a lot of scientists have gotten together and studied this, and they all pretty much agree that of our experience, our life experience, just what you're experiencing right now, what I'm experiencing right now, the way we feel about it and the way we perceive that, 85% of that is based on sight alone, vision, what I see. So does that means, and I actually have read an article about this, that means that if a person that you're talking to on the phone is looking at something that they dislike, let's say they see some food come out on a table next to them that, something they would never order, something they really dislike, that can actually place a negative presence on your phone call. Not necessarily while they're on the phone, but when they think back about that phone call, they may think about it negatively because in their vision, they saw something they didn't like. And that's the only real visual reference they have to the conversation because they weren't sitting across from you. They were talking to you on the phone. So it's amazing how, and we were talking about our perspective, it's amazing how much our vision, our actual vision, not just perspective vision, not just our mental vision, it's amazing how much the sights that we see, the vision of our eyes really affects our perception. So I was reading some other stuff here, and I don't want to bore you with like reading all this stuff to you, but they say about that a very similar topic in this statistic in this Steve Jobs post, where they talked about 2.5 billion people use social networks in 2018. And of course, they expect that number to grow all the time. They say all that, and then they say down here that 84% of all people, 84% of all people still say they prefer in-person meetings. Wonder why that is. There's something about in-person meetings that really help you communicate in a much clearer way. And that communication is not just a visual communication, because we've already talked about it. You can see my inflection, you can see my facial expressions, you can see what I'm doing with my hands, you can even see some crap going on behind me. But on top of all of that, there's something about a face-to-face meeting that is just primal, right? There's things, and I'm not going to get into it, but I mean, people, release hormones and endorphins and all that kind of stuff, and things just about that environment around you that affect that meeting so much. But really, the most important thing for this conversation, the most important thing for us to remember about face-to-face meetings, face-to-face, lunch sessions or whatever it may be, face-to-face meeting when we're trying to build that relationship is extremely important, because that face-to-face relationship, that face-to-face meeting is really what allows you to build that relationship more than any other kind of meeting, more than anything else, because there is emotion involved when you start talking about a face-to-face meeting. People don't really tie much emotion to a phone call. I mean, there could be emotional things they talk about, but as far as building a relationship, you kind of need to touch on people's emotions, not necessarily in a positive or a negative way, but you start building that relationship and they become more emotionally attached to what you're saying or what you're doing. You build more credibility because they've seen you in person, and they've seen, that confidence on your face when you're talking to them, instead of just, hearing that voice over the phone, where they can't see your eyes, they can't see your mouth, or even if you FaceTime somebody, you still have a very narrowed view of what you could see. I mean, you're just FaceTiming somebody, and here you are. So all you can see is right here. And so anyway, I do challenge you. I do say that for those of you that are really trying to build some relationships and looking for ways and looking for things to do and saying, what am I going to do? Tracy's been talking about action plans. Oh, and I need to flex my sphere. How do I put that in action? Invite them to coffee. Invite them to lunch. Invite them to the office just to show them around, because if they've never been in here, hopefully they will at least see some things that make them go, or wow, or that's really cool, or I really like the way your office is set up, or this is a great place to meet. We have a coffee bar here. You don't even have to pay for their coffee. You can just come up here and make them some coffee at our coffee bar. So I think that face-to-face meetings would be a great thing to add to your action plan in 2020 to try to enhance the relationships that you have in your sphere, and for helping build and cater to those new relationships that you're building. And that's why a lot of times, we really try to meet someone in person pretty quickly when they're wanting to talk about, looking at homes or whatever. Before we just start dumping a bunch of information on them, we go show them a home. And that helps us read their body language. And we know, like, when they're saying, well, I really need 3 bedrooms, you really can see in their facial expression or their body language, they need 4, or whatever they're saying. But you can tell, if their words match their body language or not. And you can really read more about what they want or what they like. So that's why that first showing is so critical and so important, and really it's important that it happens before we dump a bunch of information on them, because we'll have more credibility with them after we meet face-to-face for the first time. So that's my spiel for today. I don't know how motivational it was, but at the same time, I hope it was very informative, and I hope that at least you can start thinking about or talking about or working on planning some more face-to-face meetings in 2020.